Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I always call entrepreneurs builders. I very much feel like a builder myself, but today's guest takes that building to the next level because not only is this a literal builder, but this is also someone who is such a key and pivotal player when it comes to rebuilding communities. So much of our entrepreneurial work is not just about doing things behind a keyboard or behind a computer, but also reshaping the way that our communities function, the way that our world operates, the way that society operates, and he's doing it with a ton of care in everything he touches. So let me introduce you to today's guest and fellow entrepreneur. His name is Angel Ortiz. Angel is the founder of Zitro Construction Services, which performs custom remodeling in new construction projects for residential and commercial clients. Now, what I really love about Angel's backstory is that he's born and raised in New Orleans, and during the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, he set out on a mission to help people recover through assisting them with their construction needs. Since that time, Zitro Construction Services has grown to be one of the premier contractors in the capital city of Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas. This is someone who every single thing I found about him, whether it was local business spotlights or interviews or testimonials from his clients, it's so clear that he cares, and I know that he's going to be a shining example of what that means as an entrepreneur. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Angel Ortiz. All right, Angel, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Heck yes, I'm personally very excited. In my research, I saw that you have such a cool backstory, so I'm excited to start there with you. Take us beyond the bio. Who's Angel? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
I didn't have a lifelong dream to be a contractor, I can tell you that. But I got into the business early on in my life, around 95, when I was 19 years old. And I didn't really like it, so I got out of it for a few years. I actually got into commercial printing, which I enjoyed, but Hurricane Katrina changed that all. It changed a lot for people in the city of New Orleans. And I got involved with some family in helping repair the 17th Street Canal breach, where Lakeview and the surrounding areas in the city got flooded. And I'll never forget the time. We worked overnight crews. So I'll never forget that first night when I walked up to the top of the levee and saw how much water had actually gotten into the city. I mean, the water was right at the edge of the rooftops. And it hit me so hard because I can remember coming up that road, going to school every day. And so once we got done with those efforts, it became more of a citywide effort with helping people remodel their homes, and that sparked, my life in New Orleans and continuing that process into the Baton Rouge area when Hurricane Gustav hit in 2008.
Yeah, it's so interesting thinking about that was a time that obviously the entire country was rallying behind the devastation that was experienced in New Orleans. I remember, I don't think any of us will ever forget when Hurricane Katrina rolled through and devastated millions of people. And so it's obviously such a big event. But what I really appreciate about your story is not only that you were there, not only that you committed to helping people in that, but you did it as an entrepreneur, which I think that entrepreneurs, we are the ones that take that responsibility on ourselves and we say we are going to be part of that solution. Obviously, there were so many volunteer groups at the time. There were so many people from all across the United States and probably the world that were flying in or relocating to the New Orleans area. But Angel, for you, you decided it's going to be a lasting impact. Obviously, with Zitro, you've served so many clients, both personal and commercial. Where did your entrepreneurial thinking come in that you said, no, now's the time that I want to take action and I want to be part of that solution longer term?
Yeah, actually, I always had that fire burning in me since my early 20s. My grandfather came here in 1948 to the States from Central America, and he started an exporting company, which took the name of Zitro. That's where I got it from in the late 60s, so he could have name recognition. So I always had that example. And I looked up to my grandfather a lot. I hope one day that I could fill his shoes. He was such an amazing man. And so when I got the opportunity to fill in our industry and just do things that I thought I could do things a little bit different, a little bit better, and in my own way. I just took that opportunity once I had enough education in the field.
Yeah, I'm going to go there with you here on the air, because that's something that you and I share in common, is both coming from immigrant families, and clearly family's such a big part of the way that you and I both view the world, which in turn means it's part of the way that we view our businesses and entrepreneurship, and it is a land of opportunity for so many of us. Talk to us about your grandfather, because that legacy is clearly so important for you. What are some of those lessons that you picked up from him?
He was one of the hardest working people I ever met, but also his ups and downs never changed his character, which I really respected. He worked for Sears Roebuck early on, just moving stuff in warehouses, refrigerators and whatnot. And at the time, to my knowledge, that was before FedEx and UPS had really blown up. So he spent hours writing letters to people in other countries in Central America, South America, for the services that he could provide, bringing refrigerators. And I remember one of the most interesting things that he did was he supplied the Panamanian police with all of their vehicles. He made a deal with Ford in New Orleans and brought them all of their vehicles that they would need for their services in Panama. And just such an interesting focus of business. And those were the things that I learned is he started from such mediocre means, and he did what he could to expand on that. And that's I drew from that, with my own experience. And I used to talk to my grandpa about all of his business experiences later on when he got older. And that the inception of those ideas is really, it still drives me today. I think about him often.
Yeah, I'm so appreciative of you sharing his legacy and sharing these lessons that you've picked up from him here on the air today. And it's cool thinking, Angel, now, these lessons are going to reach people in over 150 countries by you and I having that conversation. And of course, those impacts are also felt in your local communities because it manifests in the way that you work. You talked about doing construction a little bit differently. Talk to us about that, because it is prevalent. Everything I've seen about the way that Zitro operates, I'd love to hear from you what that difference is that you identify in the marketplace.
Yeah, most of it has to do with how we carry our projects to the end user, to our clients. I've worked for people in the past who are just a little rough around the edges. It's very easy to get burnt out in this business over the years. And for me, education was very important. The things that I didn't feel that I was so good at that I wanted to learn, I had to get educated on. So I got coaching. That all changed for me in 2015 when I got some coaching about the things that I had already had the personality to deal with people respectfully. I got that from my family. But in order to protect yourself in business, you also have to learn the elements and put them in place in your industry so you can provide those services and also, at the end of the day, make a living from it. So that was very important for me, is just the education and just to focus on what I wanted to do differently with the skills that I already had.
Yeah, I want to talk about this, Angel, because I'll be honest with you, part of my research, one thing that stood out, it's going to seem like a silly analogy on the surface level, but I'm excited to go here with you, is that I'm going to borrow the analogy from the tennis world, and I'll pick on Rafa Nadal. When Rafa Nadal was in his heyday, everybody said that what made him different was he played every single point as if it was match point. He didn't take any points off. And really that inspires me, because that's not an easy mindset feat to really tap into. But the other thing that I noticed about your work that really reminds me of that analogy is that you openly acknowledge the fact, I've seen you talk about it multiple times, that your clients are saving up money, sometimes for decades, in order to have these projects. And it seems to me like that appreciation that you have for your projects means that you treat every project truly as the most important one. That's hard for us, especially over time. I've been an entrepreneur for 18 years now, and I'm always constantly reminding myself of how important the work that I'm doing is. How does that manifest in your work? Because it seems like that's part of the quality that you deliver.
It seems like a simple concept, if you're wrong, admit it. You mess something up, fix it. But so many contractors in our industry give a lot of us a bad name sometimes. And, over 90% of construction businesses fail within the first 5 years. I mean, that's a fact. And it has to do with lack of education, lack of experience, also poor money management. But at the end of the day, when your focus isn't operating at a top level, using top materials, and putting your focus on what you agreed to do and why, then you're going to have problems. There are a lot of contractors who don't really know how to create good contracts, which are very important. But that's been a focus since the very beginning, because I don't like getting calls at night. I like to sleep, at night. So we put a focus on doing a good job, using good materials, and sticking to doing what we said we were going to do.
Yeah, but part of that is, of course, managing expectations. Part of you being able to sleep at night is everybody who's involved in working with you, clients included, they've been set those expectations, which I would imagine from the outside looking in is not the easiest in your world, because construction, there's always that joke, it goes over budget and over timeline. In that world, Angel, how are you managing to temper and control those expectations when there are so many uncertainties?
I think a huge part of that is personality. I try and connect with people. I've always been a pretty good connector. I've always been respectful of people. And you mentioned people saving their life savings. 3 out of the last 5 people I've worked for has saved up for 20 years and we're paying cash. They didn't go to the bank. And that's just another level of responsibility on us. But we do get into situations, a lot of the properties that we work on are very old. Most of them were built in the late 30s or early 40s. And when you do that, you will find termite damage. You will find out of square conditions. And what I try and do on the front end is write up good paperwork and have them initial next to these clauses that state that these things may be found. And when they're found, we will discuss it and figure the best path forward. That's one of the biggest ways that we've been able to overcome those situations.
So what I'm hearing is kind of a bad news first approach, that you highlight to them, hey, there may be bad news incoming, so let's just start to address these things now. Of course, a lot of that comes down to communication. Talk to us about that communication style with clients, because especially knowing that your business started, I mean, so much of the work that you've done started out of devastation. There's a lot of bad news to go along with that stuff. But of course, the good news is the type of work that you do. So with all of that in mind, how do you frame that client communication?
Directly. Always directly. Hit it head on. I like to deal with the biggest situations first and get them out in the open. And look people in the eye and talk to them about their job. And if we feel that there is a shift in treatment between contractor and client coming our way, we have to be honest about that as well. I mean, at the end of the day, we're 2 people trying to get things done. We're trying to provide a service and make a profit doing it, and the homeowner's trying to get the best possible work done for the fairest price. And if we stay focused on that, we can be successful.
Yeah, it's well said. And I love how simple you make it. Is both sides have that common goal. You both want things to move forward. Can you walk us through what that project roadmap or timeline looks like? Because I'll tell you, as someone who's never been in the construction business, who's never been involved in building a house or anything along those lines, it seems to me like you are the quarterback of these projects. You have to figure out all the different moving parts, some of which the client sees, probably a lot of it the client doesn't see. How do you make sense of putting that roadmap together and ensuring everything stays on track? Is it really good technology? Is it tools that you use along the way? What's that roadmap look like from proposal to mapping out the project scope to actually executing it?
When I go to someone's house to discuss a project, in the first meeting, I very rarely write anything down while we're talking. I'm always focused on the couple or the individual. We talk about the entire thing that they're trying to get done, and I'll take photos, find out what the most important things are to them. If the wife, it's the kitchen or the master suite bathroom, I find out is really important. I will delve deeper into that with that particular person to get more information. But once we go through that process, one of the biggest things that we can try and do, and it's not a guess, it's an educated estimate, but people always want to know, how much is this going to cost? So we really worked on focusing on, a lot of our work is design work prior to a project. So we focus on the design mainly. That number is lower, and it also allows us time to project an overall budget because we're speaking with the people who are going to be involved at that time. But once we get through that process and we have a good working plan, then we can estimate better, and then a detailed scope of work before the contract has ever been given to them, which deals with all the legalities, is the most important thing. They need to see in writing what they are getting step by step per phase of the job. And that seems to be very effective in reducing, what's the word I'm looking for, apprehension on the project, and getting people comfortable with what they're investing in.
Angel, I love how you went straight to the fact that everyone's number one question is, how much is this going to cost? It makes me realize probably a lot of your conversations are about money, which that's the objection that a lot of people feel most unprepared for countering. How do you navigate those conversations? Because price is obviously a sales objection. That's true for every single business in the world, but particularly in your industry where I feel like costs are higher than we end consumers might expect. How do you start to have that conversation?
It's not an easy one to calculate. Let's say that. In 2022, my construction costs on materials were over 40% higher than they are now, which is strange to say it, but our costs in operating with insurance and subcontractor costs, equipment costs are higher. So it's just an interesting thing that we have to navigate on a yearly basis, but typically what we draw from is past experience on like projects and doing a total on 5 different projects, and then I can apply something that would make sense. You have to gain some experience over the years, and I think that's in any business. You learn the ebb and flow of what types of projects you're going to be working on and what typically your costs are going to be. And then we work closely with our vendors also, who offer our materials and equipment, and get those price adjustments as often as we can. It could be more often than quarterly. It could be on a monthly basis, depending on what it is.
All right, so you're talking about different types of projects, but Angel, where I'm really excited to go with you on the air is different types of clients, because I know when I work with contractors in any capacity, whether it's someone in person doing tangible work around the house or it's a graphic designer, Angel, in general, I'm pretty trusting. I mean, the reason why I'm hiring a contractor is because they know far more than I do. However, I very much know that there are a lot of clients out there that are helicopter clients, and they'll be looking over everything you're doing and saying, why that length of nail? Why are you doing this here? How do you manage the different types of clients? Because I would imagine that inevitably you work with all types. What do those differences look like? Because I would imagine there are cases where you prefer one client or they both have the pros and cons. Some of them are very invested in what you do. So talk to us about the different shades of clients.
We ask questions. I ask questions early on. Through my education and my personal development early on, one of the biggest benefits I got from just dealing with people was doing my own DISC assessment, personality trait assessment, and then being able to apply that with others. I start to gauge what people want, who wants the information overload, who wants the short and sweet. And I typically do that in the beginning when I meet them over that couple of weeks worth of time while we're discussing the project. But that's just a personal thing that I do. The other way is to ask them, how do you want to receive this stuff? Are you better with email? Do you like using your cell phone? Do you use text messages? I've used online technology platforms before. What I found with most of our residential clients is they just don't use it. They would text me or send me an email about stuff. So I give the person or people the choice. How do you want to communicate? And we try and wrap everything around that.
Yeah, and I think that's super actionable for all of us in our businesses. So I'm really appreciative of that strategic and tactical hack right there, because we can all replicate it. One thing that I find very hard to replicate, though, of course, we're talking about people today, Angel, and so much of this conversation is finding the right talent and trusting the right talent and bringing the right talent on board. And you especially, you work with vendors. You probably vet so many different vendors for every single different type of material. What's that vetting process look like for you? When you get into those personal relationships, what are you looking for?
Respect, honesty. There's a lot of hardworking people in our industry, but if they don't have the respect for someone's home, then we're going to run into problems. A lot of our jobs are occupied when we work on them, so we have to pick the right time to go in, to remove an exterior wall. I have been very fortunate to say that the large majority of our vendors I have been working for a decade plus, some of them 16, 17 years. We have become friends. We've grown to respect each other. And doesn't mean we don't argue on Friday and then show back up to work on Monday. It just means we have a commitment to continuing the relationship by working on it. Whereas I've worked for people in the past where the first sign of trouble, they would cut somebody, get rid of them, whether that be a subcontractor or whatever, and find someone new. Well, eventually you're gonna run out of good people, and then you're gonna have to start getting people who may not be as qualified enough to do the type of work that you perform.
Yeah, so well said. That's important. And it's something that we all learn in life relationship wise, is there's those that just run in terms of turmoil, but then there's people who dig in and say, no, let's solve this together. And it's cool hearing actually that longevity of vendor relationships speaks volumes to not only them, but of course the way that you operate as well. So I appreciate those insights, but it makes me wonder, as someone who loves business and the back end of businesses, how are you managing all this stuff? Like in the construction business, and especially in your business, do you have some sort of centralized CRM where you're keeping track of all this? Is it good old pad of paper and a pen that you're keeping track of it? What the heck do your back end systems look like?
For me personally, all of it. I'm still a pen and paper guy when it comes to my stuff every day. I like to sit there in the evening and jot a few ideas down that are the most important things that I need to get done for that next day. But I also use technology. I mean, we're big on file keeping for all photos and everything, all documents in the cloud. They're to be accessed by the particular people that need to know where they are, marketing people, CPA people. So that's been big for us. And then one of the biggest things that can easily be lost is how to get all of the little small things done on a job as you're exiting and going phase to phase. And we use technology for that. So we use collaboration stuff. Sometimes it's simple as an iPhone note with check marks that we can go through, where I'm collaborating with the particular people who are responsible for doing that, and we all see it happening in real time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I always love hearing from different business owners how complex, or most importantly, how simple we can make these systems. I often forget about Apple Notes, but you're right. It's something that syncs in real time. Anytime I have used that collaborative element, it's cool. I see your changes literally the moment that you do them. So that's a cool, simple solution in a world where, gosh, we business owners, sometimes we love to complicate things. So it's really cool hearing that. Along those lines, how much is AI affecting your industry? You talk about the design phase. I would imagine that there's some really cool tools popping up there. Are you guys on the AI train just yet? Is your mind going there? What does that look like for you?
Absolutely. We have started to dabble in it a little. Personally, I'm just using it for common stuff that you can be very clear of what you're asking for. An example is we had a couple of jobs that involved doing decks, exterior decks on a property. So I gave AI specific details on what I was building, and I asked it to give me both a complete and total material list as well as a scope of work written out, and it did it to perfection. So I do see the benefits of using this software in several elements of our industry. For now, it's in the inception for my particular company, but I do see the value. But at the end of the day, It's not going to help us swing a hammer. So we need to carry that to help us be quicker and more efficient with getting our documents under control and then moving forward with what we know how to do.
Yeah, so well said. It's fun for me as someone who interviews entrepreneurs for a living to hear from all these different industries. And Angel, I tend to agree with you. I think that your industry is in very safe hands moving forward, especially in the AI era, and the fact that it can help you with all the back office stuff. But yeah, being in the field with that care and attention is so important. And that's what you guys bring to the scene. Along those lines, this conversation, I think it's been eye-opening for me, and I would imagine for so many listeners as well, and the fact that there's so many moving parts to all the things that you do. So I want to zoom out a little bit and switch the spotlight onto you personally, Angel. What does your executive time look like? How are you making sense of all the different things with your business? Not only the operations, but of course, as a founder, as a business owner, you also have an eye onto the future and what your growth goals look like. Are you carving out intentional executive time? Is this something that happens while you're driving or while you're in the shower or while you're working out? What are the questions you're asking yourself? How are you strategically taking that executive step back?
That's an excellent question. And I think about this every day. One of the most important things I did for myself early on was to make my life goals. Do I want to travel? Do I want to be home? How do I want to be home? What did that look like first? And then I structured my business around that. I'm typically with my kids every single morning. I cook for them. I can get them to school. And then my day starts, and it's the same in the afternoon. So I make sure that family time is the beginning and end of everything every day. And that's the way that I wanted it. And so now I've been going through that process for several years, and it works well. Where the biggest hurdle, so to speak, for me is the growth process. Where do we want to go next? How big do we need to get, or do we want to get? And those are the questions that, because our industry allowed me to get into some real estate investing as well. And that's kind of turning into another leg of what we do in my entrepreneurial journey. And it's been great, and I love it. So at some point, we're going to have to figure out, do I need to bring other people in? Or do we just want to kind of stay where we are? And those conversations are had first with myself on a daily basis, of just taking that alone time and thinking what I want in life. And then I see coaching out. I can't stress enough how important it is to have somebody in your corner who can give you sound advice.
Yeah, all important consideration. Angel, something I really want to publicly thank you for and really echo it for all of our listeners is that conversation that it's clear you have it, and I'm grateful for you sharing it with our audience, is that asking yourself, do we need to be big? I remember when I was 19 and I started my first business, I was convinced that to be a successful business owner, one day I'm going to need to have 20,000 employees and all this revenue. And the older I get, I'm in my mid-30s now, and I appreciate the finer things in life. And I realize you can have it all at a different scale. You don't have to go to those scales of all these corporate headquarters that we see on Wall Street and having these IPOs. So I really appreciate those insights. I'm excited to see how you answer this last question, because it is super broad and it's so clear to me how much you've invested in your own personal development as well. And that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and also knowing that you're one of us, you're a fellow entrepreneur, what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
Stay true to your intuition. Learn how to develop it in the silence of your own thoughts, thinking about your life. And if you need help with that, seek it. Just get personal development either for yourself or within your industry. And it won't fail you if you commit to it, because that's the springboard into the next steps. That's going to get you where you figure out you want to go.
Yes, so well said. Important advice. It's easy to hear it, listeners, but it's harder and more important to actually take action on that. And if you go back and you re-listen to today's episode in conversation, you'll hear how many times Angel called out the fact that he sought out, whether it's formal education, whether it's coaching, whether it's personal development, which can come through the form of books, podcasts such as this one, all of these things. Angel, it's so clear that that's been a big part of your success journey. And that's why I always say that success success leaves clues. So great advice that I'm grateful for our listeners. Along those lines, I've really enjoyed learning more about all the great things that Zitro is doing. I love your branding. I love the way that you showcase your projects. I love how clearly you separate. Hey, we serve residential construction. We also serve commercial construction. You showcase so many different aspects of your business on your website. So for listeners who want to find Zitro online and all the great stuff that you're up to, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Best way to find out information about our company is www.zitrocs.com. And for me personally, any background information or to see who I'm connected to, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yes, and listeners, you already know we're making it as easy as possible for you to find those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. We're dropping a link directly to zitrocs.com. You can click right on through from there. We're also linking to Angel's personal LinkedIn. You saw how much he enjoys this stuff and how much he loves talking business, not just the construction industry. So don't be shy about having a great entrepreneur in your network. Otherwise, Angel, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.